Alright, I picked, out of the three push pins that we can choose in this project, one of course cannot be resolved into paper. That's the one featuring double curvature. So the one I've picked to work with is the second, the push pin, the model featuring single curvature. So I went through, I exploded my push pin, I picked each of the surfaces. For the most part they were accomplished with unroll SRF. My flat surfaces here, like these two circles, I just made a copy of them and rotated them until they were facing the ground. And by default, everything that you unroll is going to show up right at 0, 0, but that's really confusing because a lot of the pieces look the same. So here I have arranged them from front to back. So I know if I start the model at the tip of the pin, that each of these items comes in order until I get all the way to the back. Alright, so I'm going to hide all of the material except for these surfaces that I've unrolled or rotated. And I want to get into the top view, and this is absolutely crucial for the next stage. If I happen to make what's called a 2D drawing, or a make 2D using the perspectival view, I will send out really funky shapes that will never resolve into an actual model. So I'm in the top view. It doesn't really matter where these go, but it's kind of useful to center them around 0, 0. And I'll type in the command make 2D. You're going to see lots and lots of options here, but just ignore them all and hit OK. And you'll see this clarifies for you the edges of all the shapes that you're interested in. So these little lines, which are known as the U's and the V's, that let us know where a 3D surface is, we don't need those anymore. So make 2D just gives us these drawings. Before they get deselected, I'll type in group. And then up here in the menu, I can invert my selection and hide it. So that way all I see in my workspace is just this material I want to export. So I'll take these guys and say, oops, export selected, file export selected, and then I want the file type to be Adobe Illustrator. And I'll call this pushpin pattern. It'll add the .ai for me. Now, if we were working in an environment where scale was really crucial, say for example we're trying to reproduce the pushpin in a scientific manner, scale will be really important here. So you would say preserve model scale. It doesn't really matter. The main thing is that we keep everything in the same relative scale, proportionate. So I'll hit export there. Okay, now if I open up Illustrator, let's just take a look at how this came through. Oh yeah. Illustrator in the longest loading menu on the face of the earth. Okay, Illustrator, File, Open. And I want to head down to the pushpin project and open my AI file. And you'll get something like this. I've typed the letter Z on my keyboard, and while holding Option, I can zoom out. So you can see that the scale that we're working with was a lot larger. These are probably many inches wide than an actual pushpin, but that's fine. You actually want this model to be quite oversized, or else it's going to be totally impossible to make out of paper. If you don't see your objects right here when you open the window, just zoom way out, and sometimes you'll find them way over here to the right, depending on where you're working with them. Okay, so I'll click the black arrow and make sure nothing's selected, and then I can pick Document Setup at the top of the screen and Edit Artboards. Now we know that the largest cardstock we can print on in the Digital Print Center is 12 inches by 18. So let's make this 18 inches wide by 12 inches up here at the top. Make sure you write in your units of measure, or else it's going to come up as the wrong size. Okay, so these guys are still absolutely huge. The next thing we can do is select them all with Command A, and then Command G for group. And while holding Shift, I can scale everybody at the same time, so I don't wind up with a teeny tiny pin and an absolutely enormous body. You want to keep all these guys in the same scale relative to one another. So we can see that there's one or two items in here where if I scaled everything relative to this really long rectangle, everybody else might be a little bit too small. So to solve that, I can Shift-Control-G to ungroup and pick individual items. You can see sometimes these come out of Rhino unjoined, so you might have to group Command-G and an individual batch. So this guy, for example, I might rotate horizontally and that'll fit in this dimension much more nicely. Okay, better go through here and group everybody. I think that you can handle, if you remember to do this, you can just hit join after you do make 2D in Rhino, but I just forgot to do it. Okay, join. And this looks like it's going to be a pretty good scale. I don't want to get anybody too close to the edge because sometimes printers can't handle stuff that's all the way out there. You're going to be cutting these guys out by hand. So we might get something kind of like that. Another reason you want to keep some room, oops, gotta join that guy too, or group him rather. Another reason to give these guys a little bit of breathing room is that when you cut them out, you're going to need to add tabs. So as you can probably imagine, if I were just to take this stuff and cut out just following the lines and then try to glue it all together, I'd have nothing to glue onto, and my model would wind up kind of a sloppy mess. So in this case, as long as everything has a little bit of space to breathe, then there should be room to make tabs. If you want to be really awesome, you go ahead and illustrate the tabs using Illustrator. But then again, because this is more of a rough model, if you just want to guess where these tabs need to go, you can certainly do that too. What I would recommend strongly is that if you've never done this before, your first one always comes out kind of funky. So do go ahead and print 2 copies, and that way you can try assembling one, find out where the difficulties are, and then reassess your tabs for the second set.